Hey everyone, this is some continuing coverage of PAX Unplugged 2018, which I had a killer time. I got to hang out with so many awesome people, many of whom are actually on this podcast right here that you're about to listen to. I did want to let you know that if it's your first time listening to the Cardboard Herald, typically we put a lot of effort in making some really high production, good quality stuff, especially the audio, making sure that all the sound levels are great. Here, well, we had to record live in an Airbnb kitchen, which I think it turned out awesome, but I wanted to let you know that if you wanted to check out some of our other interviews, they are definitely going to be more of what you are expecting out of a typical podcast. That said, this conversation went awesome. We were all super exhausted on Saturday night after 2 days of doing all kinds of business at the convention. But yeah, I think this came out great. I'm already looking forward to doing it again next year. So with that out of the way, here's our interview with Sean Epperson, Nick and Carla Kopp, Rob Conley, and David Smith. Let's get to the show. Hello and welcome back to the Cardboard Herald, my chance to talk with creative gamers and game creators. I am doing yet more PAX Unplugged 2018 coverage, seemingly endless amounts of coverage, and I'm here at the Cardboard Herald HQ right next to the convention center with a host of awesome people to talk to. So I guess I'm going to just say right up front, this is kind of an open environment with people maybe coming and going and making a bunch of noise, so you may hear some background stuff, some echo, some weird levels, but I think you, the listener, and all of us can get through this just fine. So to do some introductions, I already said my name's Jack, and I'm going to go around the table. So with me to my left,
Nick Kopp from Weird Giraffe Games.
Carla Kopp from Weird Giraffe Games and Galactic Raptor Games.
What? And like 7 other co-producing projects that I'm sure you've signed on to between now and the last time that we talked.
Only like 2.
Sean Epperson from Think 12 Games.
And you are also doing things beyond here.
Indeed. I'm also here with the Board Game Alliance, BJ's Board Game Alliance podcast.
Well, this is awesome. Thank you guys so much for coming here. For most of you, this is actually at least the second time on the podcast. Carla's been on like 20,000 times at this point. But for David, this is your first time officially on the podcast. So we've been talking forever on Twitter. So I wanted to talk to you first, and anyone else, I want you to be able to jump in on this because David is doing a ton of playtesting in the Unpub room today. And how did that go today, man?
It was fantastic. I've been to the Unpub convention now like 3 times, and the foot traffic here was proportionately way better than the Unpub ones. Like, constantly people waiting to play test their games. At one point, we had like 17 people standing around, Flicked and Furious, like waiting to play it or watch it.
And
Traffic was great.
You had 2 games here, right?
Yes, yeah. Flicked and Furious is the dexterity combat racing game, and then another one is a asymmetric cooperative 2-player tower defense game called right now Under Siege.
Okay, and you haven't published anything yet, right? You're gearing up to publish both of these games, kind of seeing which of them is the most viable, which one's ready to go. Do you have an inkling of that now after the convention?
That's a tough one because Flicked and Furious, the feedback is fantastic. Everyone has just been very positive about it, and like I've had so many people say, I want to buy this game, I will buy this game. But it is a big neoprene mat. It is an abstract game to produce. A lot of logistical issues. We vetted a lot of quotes through a lot of manufacturers. And so I'm leaning towards the tower defense because it will be a little bit more traditional of a game to produce. And I've just seen lately that a lot of dexterity games for your first or second game have been very tough. Reception, on Kickstarter.
Right.
Have been very tough.
Yeah,
for dexterity.
It's a challenging thing to break into, especially with the judgmental eyes of gamers out there. Now, Nick, Carla, Sean, do you guys remember what it was like before you had actually published games? Like, what did it feel like when you were on the precipice of actually getting something out there, but you still didn't have the confidence of something already as proof that you could make it?
I just didn't know. Like, I was so nervous. Like, even like getting to launch day, it was like, will anyone back? I don't know. Will we fund? How long will it take? Like, there's all these questions, and like, I don't think I slept for maybe a week before the Kickstarter.
Do you sleep before Kickstarters now?
No.
More.
No.
During, none. After, none. No.
Like, so my latest Kickstarter was like the most calm, but like I still like only slept like 6 hours. I usually, like, when I'm not in Kickstarter, I need like 8 or 9 hours to function as a regular human. But yeah, that's the most I've gotten, and that was Kickstarter 4. So.
Sean, how about you? Have you exclusively published things via Kickstarter? Or?
Currently, yes.
Okay.
We're looking at doing some standard publishing in the future,
Oh.
some upcoming projects. But the 4.5 things that we've done on Kickstarter have been all Kickstarter, which makes sense, right? So the first thing we actually didn't fund. And yeah, that first time you're like, terrified, and then things start going, and then we kind of hit this brick wall of things not happening. And that was a gut punch, man. It was like, oh god, this didn't go the way I thought it was going to go. So all we did was just reach out to all the backers. We canceled the project, and then reached out to everybody and just asked them, what were your concerns? What did you not like? What did you think we could have done better? And then take that feedback and process it and try and do something a little bit different.
So I tend to be a very optimistic person, and so I'm very curious, like, at what point did you, like, decide to cancel, or, like, when were you thinking strategically, like, I would be geared towards, all right, there's still hope, there's still something to grasp on here, I bet we're going to get this huge surge at the end because I've talked to this person and that person.
There's certain metrics that you can watch, and after about 2 weeks in, we realized, we just don't have the traction, and it's not going to happen. So realistically, we need to have that come to reality moment, like, yep, okay, this isn't going to be successful, so let's cancel it so it doesn't look like it funded, or didn't fund, right? And then just, figure out what we do next. Right. And the next one actually was very successful, so we did take a lot of that feedback back, and the biggest thing that we had from people was that they didn't know who we were, so we didn't have any trust with anyone, and that the product price point was higher than what they felt someone that was new could actually complete. Like, they didn't think we'd actually be able to deliver the game we said we were going to deliver. Like, okay, those are valid things, so let's take a smaller game and try and knock it out of the park quality-wise, get things out on time, and send people their stuff so they know, like, yes, they can do fun games, they can do games that look good, and build up that trust.
That's been my main concern with Flicked and Furious. I've talked to people, I know what it cost, I know what its MSRP should be, and I know what people want to pay. I've asked 100 people what you're willing to pay for this game, and I have that idea. But my fear has been, like, I'm new, I know I'm new at this, and for a first game being a large 4 foot by 2.5 foot neoprene dexterity game, that's why I would want to do another game first, because that would be a tough first game. I think that's my perception based. I listen to a lot of podcasts and read a lot of articles, and I mean, hearing that from you is exactly why I'm like, I probably should do this other game first.
Well, it was a small price point, I think, so our initial one was a $10 buy-in. So people are like, well, okay, if they don't deliver what they said they're going to deliver, I'm out $10, whatever, right? It's not that huge of a risk, versus the first one we did that didn't fund was $40, so that's a much bigger investment. So yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, I'd also agree to like go the small route, because my first one, $10. Like, as Sean said, sorry. I was thinking BJ, because I was like, are you really BJ? I don't know, that's a different one. Like, you've messed me up now on your
he's
name.
gonna love that. We're nemesis, so that's gonna be amazing.
Anyway, like, as Sean did, like, I did a $10 game, and people are like, $10? That's okay to lose.
Right.
Yeah,
That's
well, I think the overcoming the problem of visibility and trust that people may have, is a great way to start out with small things that are easier projects. And I think that's true in podcasting too. Like for me, I didn't start out immediately contacting the biggest names in the industry saying, yo, biggest name in the industry, Carla Kopp, will you come on to my show? I started with like, yo, hey, friend of my group who publishes print and play games, I've been doing this podcast about writing reviews. Would you come on and just talk about like making print and play games? And I could use that to say I've done an interview, and then I could use that to talk to other people in the industry of, I have competently done an interview. Can I do something that is with someone else? And that led from one thing to another. And I think that could be said that it's the same trajectory with publishing one game that's small and then moving on to bigger things that are perhaps more risky.
Well, there's another thing there that if you're doing something smaller, there's a lot of stuff you know, but then there's a lot of stuff that you don't know that you don't know. And all those surprises that come in if you're doing a smaller game, it's easier to kind of weather all that craziness that's going to happen. If you do a bigger project, like you've got all the nightmare of that, as well as all the stuff that you're not aware of that's going to be smacking you in the face.
A lot more risk proportionally, I guess. The size of the project, the more risk, obviously.
Yeah, like every project I've done, there's been something that I missed or didn't understand that I would have to like pay for and do. But like,
I like the pay for as like penance. Like down the road it haunted me.
Well, like there's all these things, and like you ask people questions and they give you answers, but then you realize, oh, I phrased that question in that manner. Like, not everyone. Well, like especially when you're talking to Chinese manufacturers. Like, you might think you're asking the right question, but you might not be, and you'll find out the hard way.
Yep. Also, definitely add 40 to 50% to any budget that you create for your Kickstarter project for all of those unknown unknowns.
Yep.
Because for every one of our projects, we had come up with this budget, and we ended up blowing it completely out of the water because of you forget tariffs or something happens, something changes, and it's just been insane to see all this new stuff that we keep learning about. Even with like our third project, we're still learning things.
Wait, I thought board games were the most lucrative business, and you were just pocketing all that stuff going to you via Kickstarter. It's like what, like 90% profits, right?
Yeah, the tens of dollars.
Yeah, exactly.
The padding thing that you mentioned, that's a really good idea. And in the vein of padding things, pad your schedule as well. Like whatever time you think you're going to have, add like 3 to 6 months on top of that.
So what I do is you take every single step. Like, oh, you have to get graphic design done. You have to finish illustration. Like, okay, what's the longest that could possibly take? What's the longest that each step could possibly take? What if, Chinese New Year? That adds a month. Like, because everything is like a range of times, and it could be the entire time.
Yeah. And then add 3 months to that.
Yep. Yes, exactly.
Well, one of the things that I wanted to spend some time talking about is that we went to this convention last year, the Cardboard Herald, and now Rob, Robert, and also David, who I should say for full disclosure is sleeping in the same environment as us, is
literally sleeping with the show.
Yeah, well, what happens after everyone else leaves this apartment is, well, there are 3 bands here.
That's the extra podcast on the Patreon.
Yeah, exactly. Patreon backers can figure that out. So the thing that I wanted to bring up is that this is definitely a bigger convention this year. There are more exhibitors, there's more attendees, there's more security, and I imagine that came with its own concerns. I'd love to hear from the publisher perspective of that, but I also want to hear from Rob, who was with me last year. Do you feel like there's a different vibe this year, or have you noticed any substantial changes, or has it impacted your view on the con at all?
It's grown. There's so much more of everything that there was last year. Like, even the Unplugged room is twice as big as it was last year.
Yeah, that's right. There are so many more burgeoning designers.
Yeah, and every time I've gone in there, it's been full tables with full people pretty much sitting at them. Like, I don't know if I've just been going in at the, like, perfect time to see that, but
so how many people do you think are coming from the outside who are not part of the design community, who are coming into the Unpub maybe for the first time to play, test games?
Well, I don't know that I could speak to that, but I imagine that David definitely can.
Yeah.
I mean, there were like 4 different groups of people today that stopped by my table. Like, I haven't even been to a gaming convention before.
Oh, wow.
Let alone an Unpub, let alone a tabletop gaming convention. So there were a lot of people
Cool.
here, and new people, yeah.
Yeah, I think that, like, a lot of the guests, not the, like, designers or anything like that, have gone into the exhibit hall, walked around, and been like, all right, what else is around here? And they're like, what's an Unpub room? I didn't know what an Unpub room was last year, so, you know, we went in there, and it's like, oh, there's more games, and I get to, like, just play them and see, you know, and there's so many different kinds. It's not like the exhibit hall, which is like, all right, what are the most popular games this year, and I have to hit all of them before they're all sold out.
I think for the general audience, not the hardcore board gamer, not the design community, I think for the general audience who may be coming because this is the Penny Arcade Expo and it's like, oh, I read that comic when I was in high school, you know, I'll go to that. This is all going to be about that comic, right? Unplugged, I don't know what that means, but sure, I'll go. And then they end up coming here. There's still an aura of mystique surrounding the idea of like, this is a board game in development? Are you kidding me? And I know for all of us at the table, we're like, yeah, everyone has a board game in development. Like, my grandma has a board game in development right now. But I think that for the general audience, that's still like, wow, I'm getting to see behind the curtains on what's going to be the next big thing. Are you guys the publishers? Are you guys working on any designs? Are you doing anything in the Unpub room here?
I am not. So the Unpub room is open from 10 to 7, and the exhibitor hall is open from 10 to 6. So, I mean...
But we do have some advocates for us. Josh Mills.
Oh yeah, my designers are in there.
Yeah, our designers are in there, unpubbing the up and coming games, play testing, ringing out all of the things. So Big Easy Busking has been in there, and I know Kevin's been in there with Tiny Tumbletown.
Tiny Tumbletown.
So yes, we love Unpubs as a publisher.
Yeah, well, I know that last year that I saw you hop right in there with Fire in the Library, and I felt like I saw a million different Twitter responses from several different conventions. It felt like all happening at the same time of Carla is somehow also here and over there showing off Fire in the Library at the same time. It was quite spectacular. It was amazing. So this year you are primarily at a booth, right?
Oh yeah, the booth has been nonstop people the entire time. I got so excited today because somebody showed up early, so I got to go to the bathroom. It was yes, I could.
Wait, someone let you out?
They did.
Oh.
What has been your guys' comparison versus last year versus this year? You guys with Weird Giraffe Games for going from the Unpub room to the exhibit hall and having a booth and.
So let me say, last year where we were, or where Carla was and I were, we were in the Unpub room 24/7, just like David. This year we have a 10x20 booth because we realized the 10x10 booth was way too small at Origins. And so it's been amazing. We've had people at the booth almost the entire convention. We've had a game of Fire in the Library and a game of Stellar Leap demoing. And we've had people at those tables the entire convention. Even though we're all the way in the absolute side of, it's a not super optimal location, but we've had traffic the entire time. So I really feel like PAX Unplugged has grown from last year. It kind of debuted as an awesome convention. I heard somebody say it's the number 3 board game convention to go to in the United States, behind Gen Con and Origins. It might pass one of those for next year. growing so much.
I think one of the things that makes PAX Unplugged a better board game convention is that it's very much focused on the participants, the players that are coming there. Whereas those other bigger cons, they kind of nickel and dime you on a lot of different things, and it's not as conducive to playing necessarily, where this is all about the play. Like, you can go to the booths and play. You can go to, they've got the new hotness games that are on the tables that are sometimes being taught by people, and you can play those. They've got them set up where you just read the rules and sit down with your friends. You can check things out from the library. You can go to
I love the free game library.
Yeah.
It's free,
Yeah.
and you have to pay $2 per at Origins. It's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
I love that.
Well, at Origins, you have to play to go to the event. You have to play to get into the library area. Like, there's not a lot of, like, tables available if you just want to play a game that you actually bought.
Yeah, well, it seems like they also took into consideration a lot of things that were concerns or complaints last year. I think that they streamlined their lending library a lot better this year. I think they doubled the Unpub space because it was a big hit last year, and it is something that I think Penny Arcade as an organization, or PAX as an organization, cares very much about fostering relationships and showcasing indie developers doing their thing. And also, I think that this hobby is unique among many other hobbies in how tightly knit all of the design and publishing community is. And it seems like this con, as much as it is for just the person who's wanting to go to play games, it's also facilitating a platform for publishers and designers to actually get some work done. But that may be me just looking on the outside of that.
No, that's very much true. I mean, it's the whole synergy thing, right? So if you have an event that is really conducive to people coming to play games, and you're a publisher, then that means people are picking up your games and going to play them, and then people see other people playing those games, and that's great. And, you know, being able to check things out, then you're just becoming more aware of everything. You know, it's everybody kind of coming together to help each other be more successful and do the things they want to do.
And I really like what BJ/Sean said.
Oh, it's a thing now.
I like how you said it exactly. It's PAX is focused on the gamers, and it really is. It's here for them. You don't nickel and dime everybody, and I really think Origins and Gen Con can learn something from what PAX has done. And I wouldn't be surprised if next year PAX Unplugged gets close to or beats Origins or Gen Con because of that. Everybody, I looked around at the gaming room, everybody was just so happy playing games. It's just, everybody was like in, boom, the game. It wasn't even like loud because people were just like in the games, and it was awesome.
Well,
It's a
and
really happy
also, they have all these enforcers around, which, like, you know, like at first I was like, oh, an enforcer, they're gonna, like, be like Origins, where their Origins was always like, oh, we could see some cardboard somewhere, you better fix that. Where, like, that happened all the time. But here, the PAX enforcers are there to help you. Like, I had, I think the people at the Dragoon booth, like, they needed some help, and their enforcer, like, went to Target and got them things. Like, I was talking to another enforcer, and he's like, yeah, I can just go get you lunch. Like, we had this thing happen today where there was a child without a parent, and they didn't have a phone or anything, and I was like, I don't know what to do in this situation. But then I was like, enforcer! And I was like, enforcer, here's a child, can you manage this? And they did. They just took control of the situation, and I didn't have to. And it was just like, yeah, I feel so much better with all these enforcers. Like, bad things won't happen. Like, there won't be, like, a lot of people stealing games or, like, sexual harassment. Like, there's enforcers there. They're here for us to, like, feel safe.
Yeah, it's a really positive environment, and it really allows people to enjoy their time here at the con, and it's just a really good vibe. That's a lot of what we talked about last year when we did a similar podcast to this, was just it's a real positive, uplifting vibe. Personally, for me, from a very selfish perspective, I love getting street food from my man Dennis, who is here in Philly and only in Philly, so it is the best convention for me. But also, of any convention that I've gone to, and this includes comic conventions, this includes anime conventions, this is the convention that I just see the most general joy and happiness out of people who feel like they have access to the things that they came here for in the first place. And that's not only for people who are in the industry, this is for people who want to go here to play games. But you mentioned the enforcers and that you're so relieved that they're here, Carla. Did any of you guys who are actually presenting things or publishing things or having booths that you're working on, did you have any security concerns this year or issues that came out of security? I know that as an attendee, I dare not consider myself a media person yet.
You have a media badge.
Okay, I'm a media badge.
You've officially made it. I'm sorry to say.
I don't get to go to any cool exhibitor line, though, when I'm going through security. But it was really surprising at first that we were confronted with like metal detectors, bag checks, and also empty all your pockets. I mean, I'm from Alaska, and so are the guys that came here with me, and that's not something that I'm that familiar with outside of an airport. You know, our schools don't have bag checks, our schools don't have metal detectors, and I think it's a very good thing, especially given the current climate and some things that have happened recently. But was that security extended to you guys in the exhibition hall, or you guys who are doing any other types of things at the con, and did that cause any issues?
The only thing that really caused an issue with was just getting in to the con. So anyone that was an exhibitor had a little bit easier time getting in, but as if you were coming in as a media, and I was actually coming in as media, it took me a lot longer to get in, which is something that we're hoping to bring up to address. And they've always been really good about listening to feedback and trying to make things better.
Right.
So hopefully that's an issue that they can try and improve on. But I love the fact that they're doing, checks and the metal stuff, because we're in a climate now where that's kind of a real thing we have to be thinking about and be aware of. So that's really cool. And they're really focused on safety.
Yeah, regarding the enforcers too, they've been fantastic. This morning, I just have an attendee badge. I came in this morning carrying a bag with my prototypes in it, and one, like I said, is a very large rolled up neoprene. The enforcers have, in the morning before 10 o'clock, everything's roped off, you can't go in. I couldn't get to the unpub room. It was like 9:45. The enforcer just saw that I looked like a designer. And
You just got that look to you.
Yeah.
Hey, do you want...
Was it the Eat, Sleep, Play, Test, Repeat shirt? I mean, maybe that gave it away.
No, she said, hey, are you trying to get into Unpub? Are you a designer? I was like, yes, yeah. I just figured I couldn't get in there until 10 o'clock. She said, oh, no, come on in. You can come in. We're letting you all in, even though it's, roped off. Mm-hmm. I have an attendee badge. She was just like, she called me out and said, hey, can I help you, get into the Unpub room? That really stood out to me. I wouldn't expect that at another convention. That was really good.
The enforcers they basically donate their time. Their payment is basically the badge and being able to be a part of the con and stuff like that, and they get breaks and that sort of thing. But they're incredible. It's one of the coolest things for PAX is having those people, those go-to people. You can be an attendee, and those enforcers are there for you. You can be a publisher. Those enforcers are there for you. You can be the media person. They're there for you.
From what I can tell, and I haven't been to many other PAXs. In fact, I've been to a PAX, and that was Unplugged, and that was last year. Even though it's right close to me in Alaska, I mean, I think I said it recently, but Juneau is essentially just northern Washington. But as far as I can tell, the enforcers like that, for many people, is kind of like a prestigious or it's a badge of honor. It's something that people do every year because they feel like they are contributing to their community, the gamer community, and participating in something that maybe gives them an outlet or a sense that they are able to take part in and help other people to attend these things, to exhibit at these things, to develop things. It's an access that they might not otherwise have, and it's a really cool thing to see.
Yeah, I've got a couple friends that are enforcers, and they look forward to it every year. And it really is a badge of honor. Like, they really treat it as a serious thing. Like, I'm going to do this, and I'm going to, really be that helpful person for people at the con.
Right, right. Well, let's talk about what's causing everyone to lose sleep right now. So I know that we already talked about some of the projects that David is working on. Is anyone else here like on the verge of working on something and you're preparing for it alongside working on convention stuff like this? Do you have any releases coming out soon?
I don't think we're doing anything, right? We're just chilling out.
Yeah.
I don't have like 5 games planned for 2018.
Yeah, with Carla, I just look at her and I'm like, it's just wheels upon wheels and just machinations in motion, and it's just constantly working. I get exhausted just thinking about Weird Giraffe games and going like, man, there's so many things, but it doesn't stop there. Galactic Raptor, like there's even things beyond that, and then there's going to be more things because there's always going to be more things, you know. So what's really eating at your time right now?
So I'm in the exhibit hall a lot, but when I'm not in there, I've been taking a lot of pitches to find like the future games for like 2020. I've been talking with a lot of people. I actually got to talk with Panda Manufacturing today, and I got them to start investigating seed paper because I might be making a game that is like, well, it's dexterity, and if you, like, well, all dexterity games have like that thing where like, oh, you can do something bad and throw it away. But in this game, I really want it to be like kind of a legacy thing where if you're really bad at it, you have to go take that card and like plant it outside and grow a tree.
That's awesome.
What was the genesis of this idea?
Well, I recently signed a game with Catherine Stipple, who also did Nyctophobia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What an amazingly clever game that is. Like, just whatever anyone's opinion on the game as like something that, you know, is a strategy game or is it more of an experience or anything like that, is incredibly clever, and it's also a very noble idea, the genesis of how that game came about.
Yeah, like Catherine is just pure amazing. Like, everyone should meet her. She's here at the con, so you have one more day left. But this game, it was about nature and trees, and like I really love green stuff, and like board games aren't necessarily green because they are made of trees. But I was like, okay, how can I make this game even cooler than it is? And I was like looking up like different kinds of paper and stuff, and I found seed paper, and I was like, whoa. But then like as a publisher, I get all these people coming up to me and being like, hey, send us money, pay us to do things. But Panda was like, hey, we're here, and I'm like, Panda, you're expensive. And they're like, but if you have anything weird, and I was like, okay.
Yeah. Yep. That's kind of built into your name right off the bat.
Yeah, I mean, I always have to like twist it a little to make it a little like offbeat.
That's awesome. In unison, right there.
Yeah, that's so cool. I love the stuff that Carla does. It's so awesome. I follow her and I back a lot of her games.
How about you, Sean? What are you working on?
And just like Carla, we've got a ton of stuff in the hopper, stretching into 2020. The current one that's coming up the earliest is Dinosaurs Not Assembled, DNA.
Oh, okay.
Like that? This was a game that was designed by the son of one of the designers that's working with Daily Magic Games. And the concept was one that was really captivated by. And so we did some playtesting with it at, I think it was PAX West about a year or two ago. And adults were really enjoying it. And it's kind of a quick family sort of style game where you're basically going out and getting bones as an archaeologist. And you're using those bones as a recipe to create these dinosaurs. And you're putting the dinosaurs in this museum. Now, the thing that's going to be a little different for us is we're taking that next step is that we're making actual boards and player boards and custom meeples. So we're doing a couple new things with games that we haven't done before. So it's all a learning process again for us, which I'm kind of excited about. And the art is adorable. Oh my God, we got this amazing artist that's so fantastic.
It looks really good. I like it. I've been seeing the pictures. It looks awesome.
It's so cute. It's amazing. So yeah, I'm really excited about that. That's going to be in the spring. We've got Dice of Dragons coming up in the fall. I've got several other things that we're working on with a couple different designers. So yeah, tons of stuff.
So I want to capture this moment. This is Saturday evening. There's been 2 days of the con so far. Personally, I am both exhausted and hyped all at the same time. I think I've slept like 4 hours each night, which I imagine is about like 25% more than Carla sleeps any given night. But I definitely feel the energy and enthusiasm for the con, even though my body is like wearing down, like, oh, please not another hour with this backpack. But like, what are you guys really excited for tomorrow? I guess I want to hit everyone at the table because this is going to be the last day of PAX Unplugged, and it's kind of, we've gotten our bearings. Maybe there's more appointments, maybe there's things that you're working on, but you know, what's your main objective for the rest of the con?
So I'm really excited because we brought 144 copies of Fire in the Library, and I believe right now we have some 17 left.
Yeah,
Whoa,
that's awesome.
dude!
That's great.
It'll be the first time, like, if we do sell out, I assume we will sell out, because 17, it's actually been, like, so cool. It's the first time I have a demo table and then, like, the games to buy right there, and people demo it, and then they buy it. Like, every game, and it's so cool. So it'll be, like, awesome to be like, yes, we sold out, we did the thing that, like, I don't know, Leader Games does every time.
Yeah. I saw their big pile of root when I first came here, and I noticed that big pile wasn't such a big pile on the second day.
It's gone.
Yeah.
We sold all 300 copies.
Yeah.
Oh, man,
I mean, they
that's
can't
awesome.
make games
Day
fast
2.
enough.
I love Root. It's such a great. They make such great games.
Yeah. Well, and Patrick Leader is amazing.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
he is.
He's a fascinating dude. He was actually the like first big name to come on the podcast, and I was like super scared. And I think he was in the middle of the second printing of Vast at the time, and actually the buddy in my group did a lot of print and play stuff with him, and that's how I did an interview with Mike, and then Mike was like, hey, I know this other designer, and he does this Vast game. And I was like, you know Patrick Leader? What? And he was like, yeah, I could probably connect him to you. And Patrick probably did like, I don't know, like 100 podcasts, I'm sure, in preparation for that. But he somehow thought it would be a good idea to take a chance on someone who had maybe like 5 episodes of a podcast published in Juneau, Alaska. And, you know, he took the time to talk with me, and my heart was pounding in preparation for that. And throughout the duration, I can't even imagine feeling that way again about an interview. Like, I was borderline ready to call him sir after every question, because I was like, I've talked to my buddy Mike, and now I'm talking to the Patrick Leader. But he was so cool, and he's been so cool in every interaction since. And you know, the Leader Games is really doing something special with developing all of these really innovative ideas, and I love seeing when these publishers are kind of moving from designer/publisher self-publishing gigs into true publisher entrepreneurial gigs where you are looking for other creative people to help empower them to see their dreams come true. It's really something. That was just kind of like a Leader Games tangent, and also like commercial. I might as well have just said buy Root, but you can't because it's sold out.
It's sold out.
There's a boat, okay?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Totally. I'll plug right now. I'm working on my Root review.
I could tangent that too.
Yeah.
I think, and it just goes to speak to how awesome this community is. So Patrick. 2-3 years ago.
2 years ago.
2 years ago.
So Gen Con 2016. Like, I had not gone to Kickstarter or anything yet, but like I went to Patrick and I said that I liked Vast and I got him to sign it or whatever. And then we just had a meeting, like we went into another room and talked for like an hour or something, like in the middle of Gen Con when he was like, that was the first Gen Con with Vast that he was like selling out of. But he took the time to like just sit with us and talk about Kickstarter and, you know, being a person that's developing a game, and it was amazing.
That's awesome. So, anyone else really focusing on something tomorrow? The objectives of what you want to get out of your last day of PAX?
Probably play some games. Today I didn't play anything except my own games.
Are you back in the Unplugged room tomorrow?
No, I'm not in Unpub tomorrow. I'm happy about that. So I want to enjoy the exhibitors hall a little bit. I didn't even set foot in there today, so I want to go in there tomorrow a little bit more.
When you were in the Unpub room, were you kind of scoping out some other games there? Were there certain things that you were thinking about hitting up or seeing if you get a chance to play at either this convention or future conventions?
Actually, I have a few other designer friends here from other conventions, and I actually stopped by and played their games today. So I've hit my Unpub mark. I've checked my Unpub boxes. Yeah.
So something that I totally didn't know about going into the Cardboard Herald, and it actually wasn't until going to PAX last year, which I had already been doing this for over a year at that point, was that there are so many dedicated board game design groups in different cities and different states where it's these really tight-knit communities that a lot of people just know each other off the bat. I thought it might be there are these big major conventions, and so at the 5 conventions in the U.S. where it attracts people from all over, there might happen to be some people who make connections and then see each other at next ones. Until I started reading that there are the Board Game Designers Group in North Carolina and the Board Gamer Designer Group of Orlando and Board Game Designer Group of Seattle, and that there are all these different established communities that meet on a regular basis, play test each other's games, show each other's games, and hopefully help uplift one another and get the best for everyone. Are all of you participating in those communities?
So I actually was on a panel today on how to build a playtest community.
Ooh, well, this is pertinent.
Yes.
Yes. It was actually, I'm also excited for a second thing. So a group of us ladies, okay, the only time you get to see a panel of ladies talking about anything at a board game convention, it's about being a lady. And that's dumb.
I think we talked about that on the last podcast.
Yeah, well, we did it. We had a panel of all ladies talking about how to build a playtesting community, and it was awesome. And there's been, like, a number of other, like, all-lady secret panels.
Secret panels? Like,
it's secret because
They're
it's not,
behind
like,
the PAX,
women
behind the
talking
scenes.
about building a playtest community. It's just all these, like, people that are qualified that happen to be women.
Totally.
So I was really excited about that. But yeah, like playtest communities are amazing, and I forgot the original question.
Well, do you participate in those communities? And 2, for anyone that's listening that maybe is working on board game designs themselves and may not be aware of these existing communities or interested in establishing one in their city, like, what are the benefits of this? What do you guys actually get out of it?
Well, there's 2 different things. So for the community part, it's really getting feedback from other people that are design-minded as well. So they're going to be looking at your game in a much different way than the average player. So if I get Joe Blow off the street, plays my game, and they're going to give me feedback a little bit, they're going to tell me if they like it, that sort of stuff. But then if I have a designer take a look at my game, they're going to be looking at the mechanics, they're going to be looking at the flow, and really picking it apart, and hopefully being brutal, but honest. And that's what you kind of are looking for.
Right. Yeah, designers can digest the game a lot better. And, I mean, you all know, like, most playtesters can point out that there's a problem, or throughout the playtesting, you'll see that there is a particular problem in a game, but the designers are a little bit better giving suggestions on how to solve it, or pinpointing a little bit better for you and communicating that. Yeah, so that's something that these groups really work with. So there's one in DC area, the Break My Game group, and they're really good. A lot of playtesters and designers in that group, and there are probably at least 8 or 10 of those here at PAX I've seen.
For listeners who may not know, what's the best way for somebody to find one of those groups?
Searching.
Game designer group.
Usually, like,
City name.
a lot of people do Facebook groups, but, like, get with your local game, like, there's going to be game nights around, okay? And you start asking questions and stuff like that.
You make it sound like it's a speakeasy or something. Yeah. There's going to be game nights, and you just start, rubbing shoulders and asking questions like, you know how to get into this?
There are groups like Meetup. There's an app for Meetup that people do, groups like that. go to your local game store. Sometimes people will post things on like notices like, hey, we're meeting on Tuesday for special game design night, things like that. Facebook's another great one.
Yeah, I found Break My Game through Meetup, like, because I was new to the area a few years ago, and I was like, I'm just going to go on Meetup and see what board game stuff there is. And then I saw board game designers meetup. So I was like, oh, sweet. So that's how I found it.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Well, that's actually something that I witnessed recently, that brutal feedback that you were talking about. And it came, let's see, Greg Loring Albright is one person who came to mind. He's published a few kind of standard games, but he also does like these pervasive games. I think he was on a panel here about alternative styles of gaming. But he was going into the Unpub room to show off some of his things, but he got there early enough so he could sit and play other people's games. And his main interest was, I want to help other people be as good as possible at what they're doing. And that means giving really actionable feedback and critical feedback, but it still is in a very positive way of like, if you are going to publish this game, here is how I think that you're going to have the most success, because I think this is going to be a serious roadblock for this type of person, and here's some of the reasons why I think that may be. You might want to consider this as an alternative or explore some of these other things when you're next playtesting the game, just to give it a try. Do you guys who are designers here feel like that sort of feedback is something that you're able to take without letting it crush your ego and crush your soul? Or do you have to just kind of swallow that in the moment and go, this is what's best for the game? Don't think about how much that hurt.
I think like when you're first starting out, your first game, it's kind of your baby, and the tendency is to go, I don't want anyone to tell me my baby's ugly. Right, and when I say brutal feedback, I don't mean like, oh, this game is garbage. That's not helpful. But when you're getting like really difficult feedback, like I wasn't able to be successful in this game. I didn't feel like I had any action in the game where I could be successful. Mm-hmm. And why was that problematic? And just kind of like, wow, this person didn't have a good experience because of these different problems. You have to be willing to go, yeah, okay, hit me with everything you've got, because all that stuff, if you can make it better, that's great. You want to fail fast.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree with that. Like, well, on both counts, like the fail fast and like how hard it was in the beginning. Like, but once you learn to take feedback, like once you start working on the next game, like you just want to make the best game that you possibly can.
Right.
And if you can take feedback well and fast, like there's been times where I've had to like hear the same piece of feedback like 5 times, and on that 5th time I've been like, oh yes, that is true.
Oh, okay. I thought that was going a different direction. I thought you were going to be like, I heard it 5 times, and then I was like, yeah, I know, I heard it. I'm still working on the changes. But I guess that's not you. You actually are like adjusting the cards as you go during playtesting.
Oh yeah, yeah. So like at this point, like I've worked on enough games where it's just like, yes. Yeah, like, well, there's some feedback that, like, is just wrong because, it is. But, like, I want to make a good product, and knowing how to make a good product is, like, incorporating the feedback of others and making it the best you can be, because you can't just play test it alone. Mm-hmm. That would make a game that's perfect for me and me alone, and that's not the world, or...
That's also how you make a kitchen sink game that has every mechanism under the sun in it, and you're like, what if this were a deck building cooperative dexterity game? Yeah, with hidden rolls, betrayal, social deduction.
Oh,
game.
Social deduction was like just one too many.
Okay, yeah, stop that. But Carla's like, well, let's actually hold off. Let's write this down for a second, because everything up until that point, I think I may be able to work with that.
So I'm so at this point, I don't like taking pitches from people. So instead, I'm pitching ideas to designers, just seeing what sticks, and I might be pitching ridiculous ideas to them like that, but it's enjoyable for me.
So I think the biggest thing that you said is that a lot of time feedback is going to come at you like what they want to see. What if it was a social deduction? So it's really important for a designer to get to the root. Why are they thinking that they want this?
Exactly. Like if someone's like, I guess your game's all right, but have you thought about it not being a dexterity game because dexterity games suck? That's not exactly the kind of feedback that you're going to probably want to take action upon as far as your game. But, what is an example of some really good feedback that you guys have gotten or like feel like is something that designers who are working on their games out there should hear and should act on?
So I could tell, so kind of like the other side. So as a developer, we've been signing games and helping them develop and providing a lot of feedback. And bringing that feedback into the development thing, I think the biggest example for Fire in the Library was originally this game came to us with tools, which were awesome. And we said, these tools are awesome. We need to bring them out.
Well, I wouldn't say that they were awesome.
Well, that's the thing. Because, like, you had a set of tools and they did cool things.
Well, you had 4 tools, and you could only use them in very specific situations. And I was like, but I want to use them all the time. Let's just make it so you can use it all the time.
So it's essentially get to the root of the fun. Hey, it's really fun to mitigate my luck of pulling things out of a bag with using these tools that make this game a strategic thing. It's now you have input randomness and you can really mitigate it with strategy rather than it just being a flip a coin, you guessed wrong, kind of push your luck game. And so it's like, find that focus on the fun. What's the fun part of the game? And that's the feedback you want to get.
Well, I think what's really helped me is to really set the scene when we start playtesting. Like, instead of just letting people throw whatever feedback at me that they want to give, I'm like, okay, this is exactly the feedback I'm looking for. And also, this is the list of feedback that I'm not looking for. I don't want you to tell me that my graphic design skills suck, because I know they do. I know they do, and I'm going to hire somebody to fix that. So, preparing people in the right way before you even start, before, they play the game, and, just setting them on the right path gets you so much better feedback.
Yeah, and to go on that, so, I mean, Flicked and Furious and the other game is not my first games. I've designed 3 other games that I've shelved, and my second game was a party strategy game, and I decided as a new designer, amateur, never published or anything, I hired a consultant, a professional developer, and I fronted that money to say, hey, can you meet me at this convention, and I would just love a couple hours of your time to get your feedback. And I expected it to be a little harsh, but not half as harsh as it was.
Yeah.
It was great. That was a learning point, because I knew, okay, I really pointed out that I don't know what I'm doing yet. And so that was the best thing I could have done, was to get that harsh criticism and be like, yeah, sure, your game has player choices, player agency, but they're not meaningful. That was his main criticism. There was no meaningful decisions for the players there.
So I love what you said, and that's where it's a learning point.
Yeah.
It's exactly, because what the problem is that if your game gets out there, somebody's going to think this no matter what. At least this time they're telling you, so you have a chance to mitigate it or deal with it right now and make it better based on that. And I really suck at taking feedback. I take it as a personal attack on me. And whenever it's like, man, I can't handle that. So I actively have to go, hey, they're trying to help me. Mm-hmm. And they're giving this feedback. This is what they think no matter what. It's good that I know it rather than them talking two-faced to me and saying what I want to hear. I want to hear what's reality.
One of the things I've noticed is that I think it's useful to talk to people and get their direct stuff, but also having a way for them to give you feedback in a written form, because some people really and we're talking about just regular players, right? They're not really comfortable telling you hey Sean, I don't like this game, I think it sucks. They don't want to be mean to you, right? And they feel even if they're giving valid feedback, I didn't like this mechanic, they feel like they're telling you you're bad. Mm-hmm. But if they could write something down and kind of be anonymous, then there's a less pressure on them, so they can actually be a little more honest and open with you.
Do you guys actually get people who are Yeah, I think this game sucks. Like, just straight up like that, because everything that I've observed, and a lot of it is in unpub situations, so maybe it is that I'm witnessing people who are in the designer community, which part of the reason why I am fascinated by the design groups or designer groups of people who are designing games, is that it's also preparing one another for the process. You know, it's talking to one another about what to expect, including preparing people for when you get feedback that is not an attack on you, that is constructive feedback for the game. But when I'm witnessing the feedback happening, it usually is something that's like, hey, I don't think this gives you enough agency in this game, and I'd worry that this is just going to make people feel like they lost their turn and didn't have anything to make critical decisions based off of out of that, or like they just didn't get to play the game during this turn. I'm worried that the core amount of fun that this game provides is all in the first, like, 50% of the game, and then it just drags from that point forward. The feedback that I tend to hear seems to be really good stuff, like, and articulating important points. And is that just I happen to be in the unpub room at the right times? Are you guys getting some people being truly savage about your games?
Oh, well, I haven't gotten anybody to be, like, truly savage.
That's what the internet is for, right?
Yeah, that's like the internet, and after, like, where people
Comment section of the
buy your
Kickstarter.
game and they're like, oh, this isn't an engine building game? I hate it.
Yeah.
But whatever, those people. But I do really try to get all the negative comments. Like, usually my first question after the game is over is like, hey, I want to know the worst thing about this game. And then I just throw out things that could be the worst thing. Like, well, if I'm, like, noticing things like, oh, yeah, weren't those player turns really long? And I start, like, saying the bad things about the game. And then they, like, feel a lot more comfortable. Like, they will admit or, like, agree with me and, like, just start adding it. So it's never really, like, savage, but, like, if I start saying bad things and, like,
You're opening the door for them.
Yeah.
Now that you mention it, I did hate your game.
And, like, I want to know that if that's true.
Yeah, exactly, and that's
Perfect.
important.
The rest of the game.
And that's something that happens in the podcasting space as well, that, you know, I welcome feedback for this show, but I also know what I want this show to be, more or less. So, you know, there is a difference between, yo, your show just sucks because I don't like you as an interviewer. I don't know that I can do much about that, but if I follow that up with, like, well, you know, I know that I struggle with repeating my questions over again, like rephrasing them or using the same phrases or going off on tangents and talking about random things. You know, what are the parts that you do like? What are the specific things when you say, I don't like you as a host? You know, what are those things? And that's information that I can act on to see, is that something that I feel like is a core part of what makes this thing unique and may give me listenership, and that's specific to this one person's perspective? Or is that something that I could do to become better at doing this thing in general and realizing a better version of what I want to be putting out there?
I actually did have a playtest where it was for Click Click Boom. A player, after the first round, said that he couldn't play it anymore, that it was too stressful for him, and he was just kind of freaking out, and like he's like, I don't want to play this anymore. Like, that's great. That's I appreciate that feedback. Please go find another game to play. That's cool. This isn't for you. But I also I took that as a win, because that's exactly the kind of feeling I wanted that game to have. I wanted people to have that sense of like dread and fear and pressure. Now, clear, not for him. Cool. Go have your thing. But you just made me feel like, okay, this is on track. So your negative feedback was actually positive feedback for me.
I want to make people uncomfortable. The Eli Roth method.
Yes.
I've figured out my art. Well, Sean, I think we talked about some of the things that these other guys are working on, but what's going on with Thing 12 Games? You know, what do you have cooking?
Gosh. Well, like I said, we've got Dinosaurs Not Assembled coming up, and Dice of Pirates. And we're also doing like more stuff with the podcast, going out. And that's one of the things I'm really looking forward to for Sunday. We're interviewing like the bigger guys as well, but when we get to talk to the more indie publishers, I love doing that kind of stuff because we're giving them a lot more, viewership and kind of getting the word out. I got to play Eschaton, which is a deck builder game, a really, really cool deck builder game. But they're definitely kind of an indie publisher, and not a whole lot of people know about them. So that was cool to kind of like get some more information out there for everybody else.
That's awesome.
So you mentioned Dice of Pirates, and I just wanted to say we played it recently. We got our Kickstarter in.
Finally, because you messaged me personally. Kickstarter creators are the worst at filling out pledge managers.
There's the irony for you.
But I loved it. I thought it was awesome. So
Thank you.
And I'm excited. I didn't play it with the Dice of Kings, is that the other one? And Dice of
Dice of Crowns.
Dice of Crowns.
Gosh, know people's
Dice
products.
of Crowns. I'm excited to play it with it together. I noticed there was a way to play it together. So
And I
that's
hope
exciting.
you can with Dice of Dragons too.
Dice of
all
Dragons.
There
three.
is something that we're working on to have Dice of Dragons, Dice of Crowns, and Dice of Pirates together.
Oh
in
my
some
gosh.
fashion.
I mean,
This
so
is it.
many
Oh,
dice.
okay.
Dice freak out.
Tangent here, like if you're wanting a really quick playing dice game, Dice of Crowns, and I got to play a prototype version of Dice of Pirates last year, and they're both really fun, quick playing, heavy player interaction games, which is amazing for like a quick dice game. You don't ever get that except when Sean brings it to the table. But I gotta know, is the published copy, does it Dice of Pirates also have that like ballistic fabric for it?
Yep.
Oh my god, that stuff is amazing. I love your guys' rule book because I've tried to destroy it in any number of ways, and like some ancient like unholy artifact, it will never be destroyed. It is invincible to any tools of man.
It's made out of bulletproof material. You hold it up and like, okay, go ahead and shoot me. Maybe
Yeah, well, let's not go that far. The Cardboard Herald must officially state that we do not endorse or recommend that you try to protect yourself from bullets using the materials found in Dice of Pirates or Dice of Crowns, but you do you.
Just store it near your heart.
Exactly, yeah.
Just in case.
Yep. It's like the perfect size. You have one next to each other just right there, and
Press pocket. Just
you're
hook it in.
invincible. 100% invincible. Cannot lose.
Heart shots, maybe.
Well, I mean, you can't get killed by getting shot anywhere else.
Right?
Yeah. This
That's
went
science,
to some
kids.
weird.
That's science.
Yeah, this went to some weird
I mean,
places.
I saw that on TV a number of times.
Yeah,
So.
exactly. From the number of people who have been miraculously cured like the next day in 80s action movies after being like assaulted
Gunned
with
down.
any number of things. This is science, as Sean said. All right. Well, the last thing that I wanted to bring up, just because it's again my favorite thing about PAX Unplugged is the positive energy. It's the connections that people make, and it's the enthusiasm. Do any of you want to give any shout outs to like someone else is here or something that you saw at the convention that you were like, man, this was really cool, and I think that people should pay attention to this?
Well, I did get one of the designers I've met in the past, Julio Nazario, has a lot of really cool game designs. There's this one called Dice Revolution.
Yeah, it is amazing. It has like a speaker in it. It's so cool.
Julio is one of the most up and coming. Like,
Yes,
if there was like a
he
Rookie
does
of the Year
weird
designer,
stuff.
I'm pretty sure he would win this
Yeah,
year.
yeah, that
It's
guy.
like every other day he's got something signed by somebody else. I love his designs.
Yeah.
He thinks like outside the box.
Oh, yeah.
It's
Literally,
awesome.
all of his designs use the box inside and out.
Oh yeah.
Well, he's got, 4 designs here that he's
5.
going on in the Pub Room, 5
yeah.
games. And, I first thought, like, oh man, this guy's been working on this forever. And he's like, I've been designing games for about a year and a half. I'm like, what? What?
Every day he comes up with like this new idea that's like something new and it's never been done before. I don't know how you do that.
Yeah.
I want to do that.
But so just to piggyback the Dice Revolution. It plays so fast. You actually listen to a DDR song, and each DDR song introduces one little like new thing or mechanic to the game. And so you have, I don't know, did you play it today, Jack? Or did you see it played?
I got to check it out.
Yeah.
He showed it to me earlier. He was like, "Oh, you're a music guy, so let's talk about this Dice Revolution." So he went over it with me, but I didn't have time to play it. I'm hoping to check it out later on at the con.
So like each round lasts the length of a DDR song. What's that? 2 minutes or something like that. So it mixes both puzzling, like simple thinking, and dexterity. But because it's so fast, you're rushed at the dexterity elements, and it's all about like doing it very finely. And like if you have all the time in the world, it's super easy. And the puzzle stuff, it's just a matter of like stacking arrows in the right order. The easiest thing if you're not under pressure. But because you're under pressure, and you're doing both of them simultaneously, it's just a really good mix. Mm-hmm. And just tie that into like a light, funny, cool theme. It was refreshing. I really like that game.
So I've been tied to my booth like the entire time, and otherwise I'm in meetings. Like my break today was being on a panel. But I do want to do a shout out for like my booth staff. Well, not only do I have an amazing like star-studded booth staff, but like they just like they do all the things and they're awesome. So they're Liz from Beyond Solitaire, Jeremy from Jambalaya Plays, Danny from Derek and Danny, Michelle from A Geek Girl's Guide, Kevin, who is one of my designers, and Quinn. Like, they have just, like, gone above and beyond and been there and taken over things and, you know, just taken care of me. Like, I get to actually sometimes sit down and just look, and it's great. It's fantastic.
I'd like to give a shout out to Seize the Bean by Quality Beast. Mm-hmm. They're outside of the U.S., although the designer lived in Seattle for a while. And just I happened to run into him and saw that he had his game here, and it's fun on Kickstarter, and they're close to having all the manufacturing stuff done. But it's a really cool deck builder game with a coffee theme. So you're running a coffee shop, and you have baristas and people coming in to buy stuff. But they're working with Panda, and the extra components, they've got these 3D components like a donut, and their first player token is a cup of coffee, and they have these coffee beans and these sugar cubes that you're using, and they look legitimately like those things. So the quality bar in this game is just freaking crazy, and he's super, super nice person too. So he's here doing his thing. Like, oh yeah, this is awesome. I'm glad you're here. I tried to give him some shout out on social media, and like this nice guy.
That's awesome. Well, Carla just put me to shame by like saying, instead of focusing on these other things going on, we should focus on my booth staff and how helpful they are. So I should say that Robert and Rob have done amazing jobs in helping me do all kinds of filming and podcasting, and the degree of sophistication that we are producing anything this year is way above and beyond the like iPhone and lapel mic method that was being done in the past. Like, now we have 2 cameras and only one of them is an iPhone this year.
Upgraded.
Yeah, it's a serious upgrade. But as far as games, like there are so many cool games out here, but we played one last night. I think it was called Medium. That was by Greater Than Games. It was this design team of 2 friends, and they just signed it with Greater Than Games, I think 3 days ago. But they've been working on this for a while, and it's a social game where at first you may think, oh, this is just like a squishy social game. This might as well be Balderdash or something. But it turns out that there is a sense of progression and strategy in it that becomes so much more intuitive and yet complex as you go on, and you see the genius of the game design as it unfolds. Effectively, it's an improv game where you're just guessing a third word based off of 2 cards that each player has played, and you work in teams, and you're hoping to get one associative word right after counting down from 3, 2, 1 word. If you both get it right, then you win something, but if you get it wrong, whatever different words that you said, you try to guess again based off of those words, and then you go again. And there's a specificity that narrows down that makes this one of the most exciting and immediately satisfying games that I played in a long time. And there are so many social games like this where I feel awkward, like I'm the fool if I get it wrong. And something about how this was structured both made it feel like I could apply some intuition and some strategy to how I was honing in on words, and also when it was wrong, it was also fun for me. Like, I didn't feel like the butt of the joke when I got it wrong, or like people are going to laugh at me like, you didn't actually get that right, how could you not know that Codenames word? And that game was one of the most exciting games that I've played in a long time. The last thing that I hope I'm going to get this name right, and Sean, you may know more about this because I believe they're based in Washington, but there's a nonprofit, Game to Grow in Washington, and I'll put a link in the notes here, but they work with, I believe, autistic children as well as children who have been exposed to trauma, playing D&D as well as other tabletop games with them as a way of socializing with these children and giving them more adaptive skills and being able to cope with some of the things that they're struggling with. And it is a super awesome program that I am, like, personally and professionally, with my outside of tabletop gaming work, very interested in learning more about everything that they're doing.
We actually had them on our podcast a while back, and yeah, it's a super, super cool concept. The idea of using tabletop gaming, role-play gaming as a form of therapy to be able to work through things that you had going on and be able to help people be, more social and be able to start to understand different cues and things. It's a phenomenal group, and we're actually going to be talking with them tomorrow as well, just to give them some more love.
All right. Well, I know it's getting late. We got one more day of PAX ahead of us, and I really appreciate everyone who has taken the time to come onto this podcast. This has now been 2 years of doing this, and I think it's officially the thing that I'm probably going to be looking forward to doing the most at PAX U3. So thank you all for coming on to the show, and for those of you listening, if you're interested, which you should be, in anything that we've talked about here today, I'm going to put the contact information as well as all of the good social media, website stuff for all the people who were on the show. Thank you guys all for coming on.
Thank you for having us, man.
Yeah, it was so fun.
Thank you for listening to the Cardboard Herald. As always, everything we do is ad-free and audience-supported. If you'd like to help keep it that way, find the Patreon link at the top of our webpage, cardboardherald.com. We have several levels of support with various rewards. If you enjoyed the show, we do a whole bunch of other stuff, including reviews, interviews, and recommendations across writing, podcasts, and video. You can find that on our YouTube channel or by visiting any of our social media or our website. So with that out of the way, thank you again for listening to the Cardboard Herald.